Hello, and welcome to As We May Think. Uh, this is another in the series of web component videos that I've been doing. I've done 3 parts so far, and this one, fourth one, I want to start off by finishing up something we started in the previous one. I was working my way through all of the React examples that are provided on the homepage for React, but I'm building all of them with lit element instead. So I got as far as the third one, and then stopped. I didn't quite finish all of the third one because I didn't provide the control down here to allow the user to enter what needs to be done. So that would then add another to-do to the list. So let's go ahead and finish this one, do the fourth one, and then let's start, at least begin talking about attributes and properties to get you an introduction to some of the deeper concepts of actually components in general. Things like attributes and properties are true of any of the web component systems because there's something that's just built into how HTML works. So let's continue on with this example. Specifically, let's put a control on here. Let's put an input. And then we're going to do something we haven't done before. Let's see, we'll say handle input change. That's probably not a great name, but we'll go with it anyway. All right, here we can actually say what needs to be done. Actually, I'll make that a label. If I can remember my syntax, we'll make that a label for the other thing specifically. For see if that's the right syntax. I don't really remember, to be honest. Okay, that looks good. All right, now let's go ahead and actually create this function right here. Now, let's talk about what this function actually does. This basically says when this event occurs, which would be an on change, then it's going to call this function anytime this event occurs. So if I provide that function right here, handle input change, we're going to take we're just going to call, we'll say event. So we're going to get an event when that happens, and the event is going to be referring specifically to this input. So event.target. So theoretically, that is the event.target. So let's see. If we then say this dot to do item, actually, let's do that. Equals event, or sorry, input dot value. Okay, so theoretically, whenever they type something, we get an event. That event triggers this function. The function gets something that points to the input. It can pull the text out of the input and then use that to add a new item to the list. So let's go ahead and say, oh, I know what we do. The bit that I'm missing is a button. Button. So let's put a button down here that says add this dot todos dot length plus 1. All right, so what all have we done thus far? So basically we've added a label, we've added an input that goes with it. Whenever that has a change event on it, it automatically triggers our function. That allows us to get the current to-do text out of the input and put it onto a property of this class. So far, so good. When this happens, we need another event to happen. So at click, so already you should be getting a sense for how do I make the events on various things trigger functions so that I can react to them. So in this case, we'll say handle, this dot handle add, and we'll add a handle add here. I'm not sure I need the event in this case, but we'll go ahead and add it anyway. All right, so now let's just say, okay, this dot todos dot push this dot to do item. So basically that says when we had an add happen, then we will push whatever the current version of the to-do item is, which we've saved after each and every change dutifully. Let's push that onto the end of the list. Let's cross our fingers and see if this actually works. All right, let's see. Didn't work. Good job. All right, so what did I do wrong? Didn't get any errors. So let's just take a second and actually debug it. I'd like to pretend that I had planned this all along. I didn't actually, but this gives us an opportunity to look at how debugging goes on this, because it's really fairly easy. We're interested in the to-do list. So let's point at it as an element in the browser. So if I look at $0 now, that is the to-do list thing. And you're going to like this even better. Let's see. What did we call that text? I'm sorry, I've forgotten already. To-do item. Oh, very interesting. So it actually did fix the list, but that didn't trigger a render. That's on me. You know why it didn't trigger a render? Because lit element only knows to trigger renders when properties it created that it's watching for changes change. And we didn't tell it about to-dos. So we can actually fix that very easily. Watch this. Let's come back over here. We don't have a properties for this one yet. Let's add one. We'll remember to use parentheses this time. You'll know what I'm talking about if you saw the previous video where I forgot to do that like a million times. And then we will say that we're going to return an object. That object is going to have the names of various properties and attributes we're interested in. And in our case, to-dos is one of them. And it is of type array. So now, this is a property that lit element is now paying attention to. Changes to this will trigger a new render to happen automatically. Let's go back. Obviously, everything's reset. And let's do this again. How very interesting. What I should have done here, I wasn't thinking, is to actually change the array in a mutable, well, more of an immutable way. So I would take and assign an all new value to the array. So this dot todos equal this dot todos dot concat this dot to do item. Okay, here's the problem. There's a distinct difference between the two things that I've written so far. So if I write this dot todos dot push this dot to do item, what this does is it says, here's the existing array, I'm going to add one more item onto the bottom of it. Anybody who has a pointer to the array doesn't get a notification that that changed. In this other case, however, I'm basically saying, oh, here's an all new array, which is just like the old array, plus this one item added to the end of it, and we're going to assign that to the to-dos. That actually changes out what the pointer points to and immediately is noticed by lit element, which then passes down that array to its child. You actually see that right here. I never explained what the dot does here, but basically it just says for this element that's inside me, set a property named to-dos to this value. If I did it this way, it would change the attribute. But by putting a dot there, it says set the property to have that. So it comes down, finds the to-do list, whichever one is embedded inside it, and goes and sets the property directly on it. Since we're now changing out this array here in the handle add, that goes and then percolates down to here. He'll also notice his array change, and he will update his list. So that was a goofy mistake on my part. Let's see, let's add something like click notify. And there we go. So we have now done everything that the to-do example required. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can get it to show the full UI again. There we go. So let's do the last of these, which is the Markdown editor. And after that, we'll talk a little bit about properties if there's time. In this example, what I've done is I've already gone ahead and I've added two more imports that weren't there before. One is unsafe HTML. I'll explain that in a little bit. The other one is the thing that is going to do the conversions between text and HTML for us, because that's what Markdown is. It's a shortcut for users to be able to type text and then have it become HTML, even if they don't really know HTML. They can do simple things. If you've never used Markdown, it's really neat. But I can do things like I can say, whoops, let's add that back. I can do things like I can say, and heading. And that automatically becomes this. So this is an easy thing that people can remember to type in text, but this is what it actually becomes in HTML. And so your end users don't actually have to learn HTML in order to be able to type stuff that looks good for other people. Simply putting in a bunch of list items with a dash in front of them automatically becomes an unordered list, which looks pretty good. So Markdown is very handy. I really like it. And it avoids some problems that we're going to talk about here in a minute with unsafe HTML. So let's keep going here. Markdown example is what this should be called. And the class is named Markdown Editor. All right, we will redo that. Okay, so that's all fixed. We know we're going to need some rendering. All right. Let's see what needs to go in there. All right, we also know we're going to need a text area there. All right, that's good. Okay, hopefully that worked correctly. It doesn't look great, but we can fix that later. Alright, let's say when this changes, we want to know about it. So I don't know if I can use the @change event. I'm going to say it's @input. That may not be right, but we'll say it's @input just for the sake of argument. And so that, whenever that happens, we want to call our this.handle mark. Okay, so a function will get called now every time that event gets thrown. So that event is called handle markdown input. It gets an event. All right, so this event will come every time they change that. Let's see, event.target.value, and we need to assign that to our, well, we better set some kind of property this time, or else we're going to have the same problems we had in the last one. Static get properties, return object. All right, what are we going to call this? We'll call it markdown. So the markdown is this. It is of type string, not surprisingly. And then we're also going to have something else that is of type, we'll call it the other one HTML. That's our output. That's also type string. All right, so now we have two properties on our class. Those two properties are both of type string, and whenever either of these changes, if it changes completely, then it will be noticed by the render function, which will trigger another render. Okay, so we're in good shape. Okay, hopefully that will now actually work. And actually we can test it. Let's do this real quick. We can actually put the markdown out here. If I actually call it the right thing. This.markdown. All right. So in theory, if this works, I can type here. Okay, that worked. All right, now let's make sure that actually gets converted to markdown, because that's the part we're really interested in. We need an output. Okay, so it's an H3 output. All right, so let's add in. We're going to continue following the spec. So we're going to have another section down here, H3 output. All right, so we're partway there. Now we need this not to be markdown. We need this to be, we need this to be HTML. That's what we want to actually output in the output. They're going to type markdown, but it's going to get converted to HTML. So all right, so we're going to add this function, which is actually going to make use of Remarkable to do that conversion. All right, now then, let's see. Let's return. We know we're going to return whatever this is. And we don't have an instance of Remarkable. So let's create one in our constructor. We know we always have to call super every time we do a constructor. And then we're going to say this dot remarkable equals new, I think it's new remarkable. We're going to hope that's right. All right, so this, I believe, gets us an instance of our converter, and we're putting it onto a property of this class. Hopefully this will work. So we're going to say this dot remarkable dot, oh boy, is it render? I want to say it's render. It does have a render function, so we're going to hope that's correct. Markdown. All right, if this actually works, then what's going to happen now is you're going to type something in here, or sorry, in here. That's going to trigger this event. The event will cause the new markdown to be saved. Down here, we'll do a conversion of that markdown to HTML and output it on the screen. Let's see if this actually works. And something went wrong because it is not displaying. Remarkable Webpack imported module is not a constructor. Okay, so it's not happy with that at all. So that's not how you call remarkable. All right. Better go look up remarkable. Oh, you simply import it. Maybe that'll work. Cross our fingers. Hey, it doesn't throw errors anymore. Well, gosh darn it. What's going on down here? I can explain. For a rare occasion, this is not a mistake that I'm making while I'm typing and writing code on the fly. This is one I actually planned on. Well, you might wonder why I'm getting HTML out of the conversion from Markdown to HTML, but it's displaying it like this. If you actually look at this in detail, it should look like, yeah, see, it's a quoted string. It's not actually appearing as HTML like you would want it to. As a matter of fact, if we dove down into this, I think you would find these aren't really angle brackets. I think they are ampersand, less than, semicolon, etc., to prevent this from being interpreted as HTML. The reason for that is because, and this is true of almost all of the big component systems out there, they want to avoid you just taking arbitrary HTML and sticking it into your templates. To do so is dangerous. If you allow user A on your site to enter in HTML, and then you turn around and you display that same HTML unfiltered to user B, you risk them sending HTML to them that looks like part of your UI, thereby fooling them. Or it could hide everything on the page. Or it could have JavaScript in it that tries to perform an action as though it is that user. All of those things have happened even to some of the biggest sites out there. Stuff like this has happened to Reddit and Facebook and you name it. They've all had vulnerabilities like this at some point. You don't want that yourself. So almost all of the template systems that are out there for AngularJS, for Angular, etc., they all try to protect you from saying, oh, this is HTML. I don't care. I'm not going to display just any arbitrary HTML that you stick in here and put it onto the page. I'll do it if you created it yourself using the HTML tag template literal. I know that was you doing it. You weren't just getting some arbitrary HTML and doing it. So in this particular case, we need to do something else to tell it, hey, this is okay. The user typed it right here. I converted it to HTML here. I'm not showing this to some other user. And even if I was, it's Markdown. And I know Markdown is safe. Markdown's conversion to HTML is designed not to have any vulnerabilities. So I don't have to worry about that. So that's where this comes in right here. Unsafe HTML. This is a plugin for lit HTML, and we're going to use it here to say this is okay. It's A-okay. And if I remember my syntax, this is going to say it's just hunky-dory now. And apparently that's not the case. This.unsafe HTML is not a function. Oh, great. Let's see if I remember what I was supposed to do here. Oh, there wasn't anything wrong with this, with unsafe HTML. Something wrong with John. Let's try that again. It's just a function. I imported it right here. It's just a function. One of the few times that should have been running TypeScript. Looky there. Working perfectly. It's now using this text as I type it, putting it into a variable, and then converting that to HTML down here. So both of those two are now working. We're going to call this a short episode, I think. We're going to come back in the next episode and start talking about attributes and properties, help you understand them so you don't have any trouble understanding what you should be doing with each one. It's really not complicated, and we're going to start talking about templating. Those two things together are the two most important things that you need to understand about Lit Element, and after that we can deal with things like events and the life cycle of components, and we can call Lit Element done. After that we can look at some of the other libraries that have been written to make web component writing way, way easier. Thank you so much, and as always, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, tell all your friends, and hey, if you want to, you can click that bell icon up there and be notified every time a new video drops. Thank you so much. By the way, the schedule for new videos is every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.